Hey, I'm Abby and welcome back to the Life Work Balance YouTube channel. Today I want to talk to you about what to do when you don't hear back from an interviewer or a recruiter. But before I jump into that, please go ahead and give this video a thumbs up if you're looking forward to learning about what you can do if you find yourself in this situation. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and remember to hit that subscribe button as well as the bell so that you can receive life work balance advice delivered directly to you every Sunday. So, what do you do when you find yourself in a position where you are not hearing back from an interviewer or a recruiter? Well, ideally, you have set yourself up in a way that you won't find yourself in this position. In order to set yourself up so that you don't find yourself in this position, fingers crossed, is to actually ask the question at the end of your interview. What is the timeline for the next steps? What can I expect? When can I expect to hear from you about the next steps in the hiring process? Something like that. Do your best to try to get expectations ahead of time about when you will be expecting to hear from this person, whether it's the interviewer or the recruiter, about those next steps. If you're moving on to the next stage of the hiring process, or if you are no longer being considered. In most cases, they'll be relatively transparent with you about what next steps look like. They might say they have a couple more days of interviews ahead of them, they'll be making their decisions in this upcoming week, and you should hear from them by next week, etc. However, they may not give you that straightforward feedback. So just know that it's okay to ask the question, and if you don't get the exact answer you're looking for, that's fine. However, you have done your due diligence to try to ensure that they can stick to a timeline so that you aren't just left hanging. If you're wondering what other questions you can ask at the end of an interview, I've got several videos on that topic. So I've linked to those in the description box below, and I have a playlist with all of those videos in a single place. So please, if you haven't already, check out that playlist and give yourself some ideas of the different types of questions that you can ask at the end of your next interview. Ensure that one of those questions is a next steps question. That way you have the expectations about what it looks like to be moving forward and when you can likely expect to hear from them. If you find yourself in the position where you didn't ask the question about next steps or estimated timelines, that is perfectly okay. It happens, and it happens relatively often. So one of the ways that you can actually handle this is by sending an immediate follow-up email thanking the interviewer and or the recruiter for this experience. Now I have a video on how to write a thank you after an email, so I've linked to it in the description box below. But here are a couple of the components that you definitely would want to include in that follow-up thank you email. First, you want to thank them for the opportunity. Thank them for their time to interview you. Then you want to ask them about those next steps and also let them know that you'd be willing to clarify any questions or hesitations that they might have about your skills, your abilities, your knowledge, etc. It doesn't have to be a very long email. It can be several sentences and then it can be cut off, but you just want to make sure that you're reaching out to them, leaving a positive last impression by reaching out to them, thanking them for their time. You may want to mention your excitement for a certain opportunity or to work on the team or to join the company, and then you can follow up with that question about next steps and expectations. So something like, if you could provide me with an outline of the next steps for the interview process, that would be greatly appreciated. Or please let me know when I can expect to hear about your decisions to move forward to the next step of the hiring process. Something like that is perfectly acceptable to include in your follow-up thank you email. Again, in a perfect world, you send this follow-up thank you email with that additional information requesting some clarification on timing immediately after your interview. If you forget to send this email, you can send it a couple days later. It just works in your best interest to send this email immediately after your interview. So let's say, worst case scenario, you don't hear back from them after that thank you email. What do you do? So let's say, worst case scenario, you don't hear back from them after that follow-up and thank you email where you're requesting some clarification on timing for next steps. This happens. People get busy. It's not that they're ghosting you yet, so it's okay to send another follow-up email. So you send your immediate follow-up email the day of, right after your interview, and you don't hear anything back. I would recommend sending another follow-up email about 2 to 3 business days after that first follow-up email. Again, you want to reiterate your excitement for the position, the opportunity, working with the company or the organization, the team, etc. And again, request clarification of when you might know what those next steps look like in the hiring process. If you don't hear back from that second email, give them one more chance to respond to you. Send them another follow-up email, again 2 to 3 business days later, requesting the same information. Information on timing about the next steps in the hiring process, and also reiterate your appreciation for their time, your excitement and enthusiasm to work in the position and work with the company, etc. If you don't hear back from them after that third email, remember you've sent one right after your interview, a couple days after that first email, and then a couple days after that second email. If you don't hear back from them after that third email, you might be getting ghosted. So I would recommend you move on. Now, while it's disappointing to be ghosted, while it's upsetting and frustrating, it happens. All of us have likely received a text message that we haven't responded to, and then several days, maybe even weeks or months later, we have this realization that we didn't respond to that person. So it happens. We don't want to take that personally. We just want to be able to gracefully move on to a different opportunity and acknowledge that we might have just dodged a bullet, that might have been a red flag, and that ultimately it wasn't the right fit for us. Along these same lines, we do not want to put all of our eggs into one basket when it comes to the interview process. Just because you have an interview and you're in the interview process does not mean that you don't interview for other positions and that you don't continue applying for other jobs. You want to make sure that you have the most information to make the most informed decision for yourself about what position and what organization will be the best fit for you. This means that you don't immediately stop the job application process when you get a single interview. You want to continue applying to jobs. You want to continue doing research on organizations and the different types of industries that you could work in, the different types of job titles that you might be in. You want to continue interviewing with other companies. And the only time that you will actually stop that process is once you have received a formal job offer and you are going to be starting with that position. Even then, some weird things can happen where you might not actually start that job. Things could fall through on their end or on your end. So in a perfect world, while it might seem like it's additional work that you don't necessarily need to do, you want to continue job searching until you have actually solidified that job and you are in your new position. Again, that might seem like a lot of extra work, but you're not going to be putting all of your eggs in one basket and relying on a single job with a single organization until it's actually set in stone that you are starting with them. There have been times, especially recently with all of the layoffs that's been happening, where people will accept a job offer, they might even quit their old job, and then they are not actually started in their new job. So you want to make sure that you continue the job search process and you don't stop it until you actually are in and you've started this new job. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, or ideas on this topic about what to do if you've been ghosted or how you should follow up with a recruiter or a hiring manager or an interviewer after an interview, how you might get some clarification on timelines or expectations, throw them in the comments box below. I love receiving comments, and while I'm going to do my best to respond to each of them individually, it's becoming a little bit more difficult to do so. However, anything that you put in the comments can help someone else who's going through something similar that you have. So please share your knowledge, share your expertise and your experiences in the comments box below. If you haven't already, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well as the bell so that you can continue to receive life-work balance advice delivered directly to you every Sunday. Thanks, and I'll see you next week.